Thank you very much and welcome back for the final session. As you can see from your program, the title of the session is Way Forward, and the question posed is Afghanization a possibility by 2014? So that's the question that the panelists will engage with. And of course, as you can see, the last word is to be had by Afghans, as it should be, and as it was conceived by Shanti when she created this workshop, that it was an opportunity to bring some very leading Afghan spokespeople together to discuss matters of interest, not just to people in the immediate region of Afghanistan, but certainly to people in Singapore. And I think the success of the last 36 hours has been substantial and certainly brought Afghan issues to the attention of a lot of influential people in Southeast Asia and beyond. What we're proposing to do, you can see from the board, there are 5 themes or topics that His Excellency Mr. Stanekzai was suggesting are ones that everyone has addressed in the course of the last day and a half. Those topics are economy, security, governance, political process within Afghanistan, and regional or international cooperation and collaboration with reference to Afghanistan. Each of the speakers at this little wrap-up will have up to 10 minutes to address perhaps 1 or 2 of those topics, depending on their own inclinations and expertise. We certainly want to encourage them to say what's on their minds, but we do have certain constraints of time. We propose to finish at 5 o'clock. There are a few final remarks that Shanti will wish to make. So without delaying things further, let us begin with this notion that each speaker has up to 10 minutes. There will be a little card, I think, after 5 to remind you that the other speakers are also eager to get their piece recited in this particular play. And we'll finish with about 25 minutes of discussion with the audience. We'll follow the order that's on your program, so we'll ask His Excellency Mr. Stanekzai to begin, and then we'll follow the order as you see it before you. So, sir, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it was a very great pleasure to be here and to listen to so many of presenters and presenting the different point of views in different options, different scenarios, concerns, criticism, and doubts. That is the beauty of such a conference, when you are getting away from day-to-day work and then sit back, listen to people, and see that what are the bigger picture, and then you can reflect back when you are doing back the actual work when you return back. So I think, thank you very much for the Institute for doing so. Because this is an opportunity that we can have a wider, broader, deeper strategic debate and discussion. While it was the issues and topics are so broad, and it is very difficult to pin them down and narrow them down to things very, very specific. But the beauty is that the interlinkages between all these different topics will give you a broader strategic picture. So thank you for that, and I think it was very useful. The second, as I mentioned, that yes, we must be realistic, and yes, there is pessimism, there is optimism, but the best thing for Afghanistan to be realistic, and to be realistic, then it is always very good to have the deadlines, to have targets, and to meet the targets, because that will bring us to focus. But the word of flexibility, everybody is forgetting about that. We must be flexible. We have to see how the situation will change. And when we get near to 2014, we should be prepared for the best and the worst case scenario as well. It is not optional that we just say that this is the best scenario, we will focus on it, and we will achieve it. There might be the course of events may change over the period when we get to 2014. So we have to be prepared for events, as I agree with Marvin, that there will be events that will take over the transition, and there will be transition which will move on course, or there will be issues that will delay the transition. So, I mean, we have to be prepared for that. I was a little bit surprised with hearing about the contradiction messages from the region. From one hand say that the youth should leave quickly, and why they are present there. On the other hand, they say if they leave quickly, then they will be Afghanistan will descend into chaos. Why they leave? So my message would be that you help, then the process of the withdrawal and the transition will be accelerated. So our goal will be achieved. Your goal will be achieved. So there is that contradiction, and that contradiction must be translated into a meaningful cooperation. And I think that is here again and again. I think there was a lot of doubts about the peace process. I think it is one of the presenters this morning said about the strategic communication, and it's important, and I think we are lacking that deeper strategic communication. We are very much driven by the media, by the events of the day, and by the spectacular attacks or things that is happening and that is making the headlines. That is very much important. But on the other hand, our understanding of the peace process, to make it just a mechanical process that yes, few Taliban from this side will shift into this side, and then that is something that we will replace this government with Taliban Emirat. That is not the peace process. That will not be the aim and the goal of the peace process as a whole. If you remember, and I know that Professor Jalali will remember very well when he was the Minister of Interior, we made a mistake in the beginning, in 2003, when the first time President Karzai has announced that we want to talk, we want to have a peace process, but everybody was against it, because everybody was thinking that we will win militarily. And the cost of the peace and reconciliation at that time was much, much cheaper than what can be achieved today. At that time, senior Taliban members would come to the minister and ask him for protection, but nobody was ready to give the protection to return back to their homes. So I mean, this is something that we all make mistakes. We are learning from our mistakes. And we are finally getting to the point where, for the first time, as I mentioned in my opening statement, that there are key areas, as the chair mentioned before, that they are interlinked, we have to focus on them, and we have to create the synergy between all these areas. From my point of view, there is 5 scenarios for the peace and reconciliation how it will move forward. One thing bearing in mind that we should not put all our eggs in one basket, because in that case we will not have any success. The first, if we make progress in all as it's planned for transition, and make progress in all the 5 areas, I think that will be something that will build the trust and change the perception, and that is what will put us back on the course to stability. The second option is that the talks succeed before 2014, and that can also generate a momentum for reintegration in a political dialogue, and can accelerate the transition, and can improve the security dimension. But at the same time, we should not rush. That is clear, because if we rush in a deal, but not as a process, then it will have negative consequences that will be difficult to address those consequences easily. Maybe talk fail, but at the same time, we succeed to mobilize better political cohesion inside the political system, and we reach out to our provinces, to the district, and improve and accelerate the process of reintegration, and where the communities stand against the fighters who are using their communities, their localities, their district to fight. So we have to take out the war and the fighting out of the districts, out of the villages. And that is something that will be difficult for the insurgency or for the foreign fighters to continue living inside Afghanistan, or to continue attacking inside Afghanistan. There is another scenario when we move forward with the reconciliation, but one thing is very much important, that there is a perception is again generated that yes, Afghanistan is sidelined, the talks is going to happen between the US and the Taliban, and the US and Taliban will make a deal. Actually that is a very risky perception, and we have to change that quickly by putting our home in orders, and also from our friends from the US as well. And that will help us in order to make sure that Afghans are leading the process. But again, this is the media, which portrayed the situation in such a manner that facilitation is something, and negotiation is something, another stage. And when you come to the negotiation, you should have some key principles, not as a precondition, but as principle that has to be adhered throughout the process and into the outcome. Because you want to achieve a just peace in Afghanistan. You don't want that in the cost of bringing peace to one part and destabilizing another part. That is not the peace that Afghanistan people would like to see it. And for that reason, I think the whole notion of the peace process, it is already generated a sense in the rural community of Afghanistan, and they question their leaders that why we are fighting, why the Afghan people or the Afghan government is putting an instrument or the process through which Afghan will achieve its full sovereignty. It will be Afghanistan, the foreign forces will leave Afghanistan, but there will be a long-term partnership with Afghanistan. So I think with that, our main focus should be that if we can change the notion of continuation of fighting in Afghanistan is not anymore a jihad, but that is a fitna. That is the time when we will be winning the peace process, and we will be winning the stability of Afghanistan. And that's how things will move forward. And finally, I think that the other option would be that if the region, our neighbors, come with a constructive way of engagement, and I think that will also significantly accelerate the peace process, because if there is no organized, systematic support to the insurgency, if there is no safe haven for them, it is extremely difficult for them to continue the war and operate inside Afghanistan. And for that reason, so all those options are there, but we have to look at how we can benefit from a combination of the different options that we can move forward for a stable Afghanistan. I think it is difficult, it is very complicated, but it is possible. It is possible that Afghanistan will have a better future. As I mentioned yesterday as well, and once again I should say that Afghanistan is not the Afghanistan of 10 years ago. There is a change of culture. There is a change of attitude and fashion. 10 years ago, when for the first time, when I went to appointed as a Minister of Communication, I had 12,000 employees. And I had one employee who just knew that how to operate the computer. And there was only one computer in the whole ministry. And there was every street of Kabul or any other province, when you walk, then the fashion was the young guy with a Kalashnikov or with a rocket launcher who is walking in the streets. But today, you will see hundreds of young boys and girls with a computer hanging on their shoulder, and they are going to the university, getting out of that, or going to the work, or doing something like that. And I think today, I was very proud to listen and yesterday, to our very young leaders, that they are the leaders of the future. And I think they are very much articulated. They don't carry any back from the past conflicts, and they are more forward-looking. They don't want to correct the history, but they want to shape the future. And I think that is the greatest source of hope, and that is the best resources that we have, that Afghanistan will become a stable country if we were helped and we were left without the ambitions of others who try to make us what to do and what not to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That seems to me an excellent introduction for Ms. Koofi, please. Sorry.
Thank you. 2014 is a very important year for Afghanistan for two reasons. First, for the very important reason that we will have a presidential election and there is a hope for a change. And second, because of the transition. We need to do something inside Afghanistan as our homework as a government and as a state. And we expect our partners regionally and internationally to help us on that. And there are certain things that they need to do as their homework for Afghanistan. So I have kind of put few issues as a priority for us and our allies to work on it. The first thing is the reform in the electoral system of Afghanistan. Right now our system is SNTB, which is single non-transferable vote. And this created a lot of problems in parliamentary election as well as presidential election. I'm not saying that we need to, from now to 2014, we need to establish big parties, because that is not realistic. What we need to do is, there are already established parties. We didn't have very good experience of those parties in Afghanistan. That's why we went for an SNTB system. I think what is important to be done is, first of all, reform of the electoral law, and second, allow those parties to come forward if we really want to have strengthened democracy, and especially it will help us in the longer term for the change of and reform of political system to become more a decentralized system. There are more than 60 parties registered according to the new law, 66. So that has to, well, it was more than 100. So there is a reduction, and that's good. So those parties need to find their space for a political atmosphere of Afghanistan. It's interesting because right now the combination of the parliament is that we have party leaders who nominate themselves as independent candidates because the electoral system of Afghanistan does not recognize party system. So basically we have parties within the parliament, but they come as an independent figure, and that creates a lot of fragility within the parliament, because it's very difficult to control 249 views, different views, if you don't have political groups and political parties. So reforming the political system will help on one hand stabilization of democracy, on the other hand it will promote the culture of democracy, which is parties. The second thing we need to do in Afghanistan, and that is for all the political elites here, is we need to start the process of alternative for the current team. Because President Karzai doesn't have the legal authority, or his term will finish in 2014 and he cannot run for third term. Now we need to have a team, an alternative, which is a team. As I said yesterday, one of the mistakes that the international community and us did in Afghanistan was investing in individuals. Like we really favored one individual against the other, and we promoted one against the other, and some of them were our darlings and the others were not. So I think what we need to do is, we need to start promoting a team inside Afghanistan. The political elites of third and second generation needs to come together. We need to identify some common issues that we can work together. Certainly I will not agree 100% with what, for instance, Professor Jalali will say, but maybe 60% of common agreement is there, so we need to start from there. Because right now there is a lot of coalitions, political groups that are established, and this, they're so diverse, they don't have common things to work, and most of us, what we say is, what our agenda is political reform in the system. That alone cannot help. We need to bring other issues in terms of economy, in terms of social, in terms of policy issues to present to the people and make it as an alternative, especially when it comes to economy and security and social issue. This process of alternatization, or creating an alternative for the current government is a challenge internally for us, and we need to really work together to create an alternative. Now, for us, it might be very difficult to work with the first phase of Afghanistan politics. Some of them are within the government, some of them are outside the government, but for me, they are expired phases, and they need to really pave the way for others to come forward. The second thing that we need to do internally is we need to pave the way for a political reform. And I was lobbying for a reform, a decentralized reform, before many of the politicians who talked today and yesterday were talking about it. This is something that I believe, given the socio-ethnicity complexity of Afghanistan, I think there is a need for decentralization of the power in Afghanistan. And this decentralization has to come, as Minister Stanekzai said yesterday, through a constitutional reform, not any other political deal or whatever deal. I know there are certain groups that are working in terms of federalizing Afghanistan. I'm not pro-federal state at this stage, because we're very much fragile state, and a federal system will increase our vulnerability. So what I mean by decentralization is giving more power to the regions, more budgetary and admin power, as well as political power to the regions to grow economically, politically. And also creating a position of prime minister. Now, there is a lot of sensitivity in some areas of Afghanistan when you talk of decentralization, because many people believe that the current team, which is in power, they will lose power. I can assure you that even if you go to south or east or north, wherever in Afghanistan, you see people who are complaining from lack of development they receive, or lack of development assistance they receive. This is because the bureaucracy in Afghanistan and the system is too centralized. You go to Helmand, and I have been to many of these provinces, I have been to Kandahar, etc. People complain as much as people complain in my constituency in Balakh. So there is a need for us internally and our international allies to look at this issue of decentralization and reforming the constitution. The last point, which is our homework as well as our international friends' responsibility, is we need to plan based on ground realities in Afghanistan. We need to plan politics based on what is good for Afghanistan, so that we don't change Afghanistan once again to a safe haven for terrorists. We shouldn't plan based on the ground realities in the United States politics or the election, etc. I think the exit, the departure, or transition, you name it, whatever. Some people call it exit, transition, departure of foreign troops, and especially the pursued discussion on talks with Taliban is basically planned based on the US politics, the election that are coming forward, and the economic crisis that they have. I would like to take you back a few minutes to what I said yesterday about the history. Okay. To what I said yesterday about the history, and that is about repeating 1989 mistakes again. And I would like to elaborate on that a little bit more. Back by 1989, when I was a student at school, the Russians wanted to withdraw. So everybody just wanted to see the Russians withdraw. Nobody was thinking about what's going to happen after the withdrawal. Talks happened in Geneva, the transition happened. As a result of that, 65,000 Kabulis were only killed in Kabul. Civil war began, and the country was destroyed. And as a result of that, Taliban then later on created. So I think planning in a hurry under the politics outside the country, outside Afghanistan, will once again take us to this dark period of history, and this is something we don't want to go. The peace process that the United States has now taken the leadership with Taliban has to be based on the ground realities, and this is something that our international allies should do. Ground realities means it has to be a comprehensive, inclusive process that includes civil society in Afghanistan, political groups, with the legal institutions of Afghanistan, like the parliament, Of course, women. I know there is 9 women out of 70 women in the Peace Council now. We have a bigger responsibility to include women, because women of today in Afghanistan are not women of 1996 when they welcomed Taliban, because they lack alternative. But women of today are, I think, much more stronger, and I, gave applause for that to Ms. Randina's statement on this. So it has to be inclusive. Before going to actual negotiations and sharing power with Taliban, we need to actually have some kind of reconciliation, as my friend said yesterday, internally inside Afghanistan. Reconciliation between different political groups, between the institutions of Afghanistan, and then once that is mobilized, we have a force. Then we can go and talk with Taliban. And talks with Taliban, well, our definition with talks with Taliban is to bring them to join the system. The question here is that why should a Talib leave the weapon and come and join the system if he knows that the United States will leave? So I think the office in Qatar, well, it's a step forward, but it has to be inclusive with Afghans in the leadership, not under the time of the United States politics. Because if the situation goes worse in Afghanistan, it's not only the Afghans who will face the negative consequences, but also the world will face the negative consequences. And we shouldn't forget that the United States and the international community came to Afghanistan only when there was the attack on New York. So they didn't come just to help us. They also came to safeguard their own borders. And that, I think, needs a continued cooperation of and listening to each other and working on a relationship with Afghan government and people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Jalali, please.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed listening to all the presentation yesterday and today. It gives me pleasure that the Afghan team deeply understands the problems that's faced by the country, and also they have a very clear ideas, clear mind about the future. However, one can become very pessimistic, and also one can become very optimistic. The real situation is in between. During the past 10 years, as some of our friends indicated, Afghanistan has come a long way. In different areas, in the security sector, in political institution building, and also in economic development. But the balance sheet is very, very complex. You can put the achievement on one side and setbacks on the other side. Well, that's a very simple balance. But the real balance is to see how much these setbacks can undermine the positive impact of achievements, and to what extent the impact of achievements mitigates and reduces the negative impacts of setbacks. This is something that you have to take in mind when you are looking at taking stock of the situation in the country. Just take any example in Afghanistan. In 2003, just on the eve of the adopting the Constitution of Afghanistan, the major highway between Kabul and Kandahar was inaugurated. And that meant that the travel time from Kabul to Kandahar, which is 450 kilometers, was reduced from 27 hours to 5 hours. And very comfortable drive. I have driven that route several times, but today, after many years, many people are reluctant to use that highway because of security concerns. So one setback actually undermined the positive impact of the achievements. This goes on and on. You can have many questions, many examples. The government of Afghanistan have been successful to build many national and state institutions. But these institutions, I expected in 2003 that one way to reduce the power of the power brokers, patronage networks. When I say patronage networks, I'm talking about individuals. I'm talking about a network that permeates every aspect of life in Afghanistan. It's a kind of predatory kind of a system in Afghanistan. It affects the governments, it affects the judiciary, it affects the parliament, it affects the elections. I was the only person in 2003 that was against elections in Afghanistan in 2004. I said Afghans can afford to live under the transitional government for another 5 years, but only when we establish the rule of law. Because without the rule of law, election become a playground for people with gun and money. And in the election of 2005, in the parliamentary election, I was Minister of Interior. I disqualified 350 people. None of them actually was disqualified. They went to the parliament. They used their money. They used their. When I say money, you know what kind of money they use. So therefore, without that rule of law, the institution was there. Instead of institutions reducing the power of non-state power brokers are using now institutions in order to advance their own personal and factional agenda. So this is something that you have to take into consideration, that when we talk that, well, we should not allow a reversal of achievements we had in 10 years. The Taliban, it's not only Taliban that will do that, we will do it to ourselves too. So therefore, in 2014, several things will happen at the same time. The elections, presidential elections, the drawdown of international forces, we don't know what is going to happen to political settlement. We don't know what is going to happen in the region. So therefore, everybody is hedging their bets. Not only the neighbors in the region, inside Afghanistan too, everybody is hedging their bets. And that is the problem that we have to look at. These are the issues that will affect, it will shape the situation of Afghanistan in 2014. We don't know what's going to happen. Therefore, I think flexibility, as Mrs. Stanekzai referred to, flexibility is the name of the game. We don't know what is going to happen. When we say about security, it is not only security of security, the capacity of security forces. It is political, it is economic, it is regional. All these things can affect security. The same thing with governments and others. In the beginning of my presentation, the first day, I identified 4 areas, 4 assumptions that will. Well, I think I spoke only 1 minute. It's already 5 minutes gone. Okay. Well, like one, I came 8,000 miles. Anyway, okay. Yes, I was talking about something. The whole transition is actually boils down to 2 things: how to reduce the level of threat and how to build the capacity to respond. Now, each one of them actually requires a set of measures. There are 4 measures, the 4 assumptions that I mentioned. 2 of them will build the capacity to respond to the threat. 2 of them will actually contribute to the reduction of the threat. It means that the progress toward reconciliation will reduce the threat. Cooperation from Pakistan and other regional countries will reduce the threat. While building Afghan security capacity will build that capacity to respond to the threat, and also the Afghan government. Let me talk about a little bit before I see another sign going up about the government of Afghanistan. We heard yesterday, and I hear it every time we have a conference like this, about the structure of the government of Afghanistan. I think Masoud Miakhel yesterday said something very, very relevant to this, that it is not only the form of the government or the model of the government which in this situation of Afghanistan matters. It's how it works, how it functions. That's important. You know, you can have a very, very, ideal kind of a government, but if it does not function, then it's useless. Afghanistan actually experienced in a rudimentary way, the both system of centralized and decentralized. In 2001, Afghanistan actually, the transition administration was two very decentralized governors appointed themselves. District administrators appointed themselves. Police chiefs appointed themselves. Even poor President Karzai did not appoint his cabinet. The cabinet appointed him in Bonn. So therefore, that was true. And that was a reflection of what happened during the civil war in Afghanistan. In civil war in Afghanistan, different leaders of different parts of the country invoked ethnic references in order to legitimize their leadership. And they become very delegitimized in the mind of the people. That's why during the constitution during Jeddah, there was an overwhelming support for a centralized state. I was once had a town meeting in Helmand province. I asked other people at the end, what tops their wish list? And one old man said, okay, send us a governor, not from Helmand, a police chief, not from Helmand, intelligence, not from Helmand, not a Pashtun, don't send a Pashtun. Send a Tajik, a Hazara, and Uzbek. If you cannot find one, go around the world, find somebody and appoint them in the building. Why? Because save us, please, from the thugs and predators who have been actually exploiting us for so many years. This is the meaning of some people think about decentralization. But we went to the other extreme. Too much centralization that we took all the power from the peripheries without being able to control them. Okay, on the paper, okay, it was a too centralized system. But in practice, it's not. There are governors who do not, defy the decision of the president of Afghanistan, provided they have the money and guns. Those poor who do not have gun and money, these are very people without any power in the province or the district. So therefore, when we talk about centralization, decentralization, put it for God's sake in the perspective, in the context of Afghanistan. Not just like an abstract thing. Those who talks about federalism, those who are opposed federalism, neither one understand federalism, what federalism means. You remember, if you go to the United States, find the federalism papers, read federalism papers in the United States. The reason the federalism papers were there, just to bring some kind of sense of state centrality to the system. That was in support of the central control. Otherwise, every state in the United States created their own navy, their own army, their own air force. Air force was not there at that time. But if there was air force, they would create their air force. So therefore, federalism does not mean the way that some of our friends believe that this is going to bring the same warlords, the same people who exploited the people in the past, to have these fiefdom again, in a repeat or replica of the situation in Afghanistan. So therefore, I will conclude. It's 2 minutes. I conclude with something which is a matter of principle in Islamic, kind of a political, I would say, political concept of government. It says that in an Islamic state, the legitimacy of the government is based on 2 pillars. One is security, providing security to the citizens of a country. And that's, in modern terms, it is human security. Freeing people from fear, freeing people from want. And the second pillar is justice in the rule of law. Today, I think for any country, in order to provide these 2 services to people, it has to control its territory. Without controlling the territory, it cannot provide security, cannot provide. So this is the key for any solution to Afghanistan in the future. Otherwise, the corruption will continue, the warlords will continue to dominate Afghanistan, the rule of law will be violated by everybody, and the corruption will continue to be a low-risk activity in a high-risk environment. You have to reverse it. Make it a high-risk activity in a low-risk environment. Thank you very much.